I always think that politicians ought to be what they are, particularly political leaders. Never pretend to be something different. What, in God's name, our Prime Minister, a near-billionaire teetotaler, was doing at Olympia today at the British Beer Festival, well, let's say I thought his presence there would be somewhat incongruous. But, of course, it was a big announcement today on alcohol duties, and the PM trying to give us the impression that beer is going to be 11p a pint cheaper. We will get to all of that in a moment. But whilst he was there, he did give an exclusive interview to GB News' Liam Halligan. Let's have a look at some of it right now.
So I think it's good that Nigel Farage and Coutts are in dialogue resolving the issue there. But Nigel Farage also spoke about the broader issue of this impacting other people. And that's my primary concern, because ultimately this isn't about any one individual. This is about values. Values that are important to me and important to our country. Values. Hang on, this is really important, rather than the individuals, to focus on the values that are at stake. Values of freedom of expression and privacy. I believe in those values very strongly. People need to be able to have lawfully held views that we might not agree with, but they shouldn't be denied financial services because of them. And they're entitled for their financial affairs to be kept private. I think those values are fundamental to who we are as a country. They're fundamental to me, and that's why I said what I said.
Almost a quarter of a million GB.
Well, let's be frank, there haven't been many Conservative Prime Ministers that have been nice about me, let alone supportive of the values that I stand for. So that, I think, must be a good thing. But will he act? Will we see real changes forced upon the banks and changes to legislation? I wonder, what do you think? Do you think Rishi is all talk, or do you think he will act? Give me your thoughts. Farage at gbnews.com. Now, Liam Halligan, GB News' economics and business editor, was also at the British Beer Festival, I suspect fitting in better with the punters than the Prime Minister.
That's my natural milieu.
I've been many times. It's a heck of an event, isn't it?
It's an amazing event. It just shows you the strength and depth and the variety of beers being made across the UK. Really, really great place to be.
Yeah, and small brewers and cider producers and all of that. No, I mean, it really is, joking aside, it really is a good event. Now, the PM there, yes, he was being quite supportive of my case, wasn't he?
He was indeed. I think I pressed him on whether or not he thought Howard Davis should resign. It would be a hat-trick for you if you've got the CEO of Coutts and the CEO of NatWest, the chairman of NatWest, who, of course, rather ill-judged as it turned out, he backed Alison Rose, saying, I have full confidence in her, and a few hours later she resigned, possibly because they'd had a phone call from the Treasury who'd been looking at Twitter and public opinion and so on. But he did support you, and I do think those words were heartfelt. I didn't quite expect him to say he thought Howard Davis should step down, but it's a kind of a story that he defended him to some degree. But I think he is just carrying on, isn't he? Rishi Sunak, exactly what he said at the Commons dispatch box. He thinks that the way you were treated by Coutts was wrong, quotes, fundamentally wrong. Keir Starmer and the Labour Party have barely been able to bring themselves to say that.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're all over the shop on this. I mean, Keir Starmer actually was quite supportive and said it was wrong. Rachel Reeves was a mile from that.
She accused the media of bullying Alison Rose or something.
We're going to have a clip from Rachel Reeves a little bit later on with Aaron Banks and get his view on that. Liam, it's the first time you've been on since, the resignations last week and the apologies I got from the BBC. Looking at it sort of, a step back with a bit of cool reflection, this has really shone a light on a big problem, hasn't it?
It has. Anyone that thinks this is a story just about you doesn't understand the story, frankly. And I think you would agree with that more than anybody. What this shows is some of the ridiculous, pretty nefarious activities that go on in big institutions, even ostensibly private sector institutions. So in this case, NatWest is owned 40% by the state because they did such a great job in the run-ups to the global financial crisis, i.e. they had to be bailed out. But it strikes me that there is a really important principle at stake here, and never again can people say, oh, all this woke stuff, it's just being kind, you're just being paranoid, you just need to move with the times, the idea of being cancelled it's all a myth. That's often what people say, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you can no longer say that, because anyone who takes the time to read the dossier that Coutts put together about you, a dossier which you only got under threat threat of legal action with your, pretty expensive lawyers. But it's all there in black and white. It's absolutely clear. Yes. They say 2 or 3 times, we can't find an economic reason to get rid of this guy. We just don't like him.
Yeah. I mean, we're all inclusive and lovely, unless, of course, you disagree, and then we're going to be excommunicated, effectively. Right. Now, Liam, big day on alcohol duties. Tell us the truth. What's actually happened today? OK, what actually happened is, while he was doing walkabout at the Great British Beer Festival, and also when I was interviewing him up on a mezzanine, which everybody in the hall could see, he was heckled quite severely at some stage. Why? Not because I think British beer drinkers are fundamentally, left-wing or anything. I don't think any. No. I would suggest, and you know this part of the electorate better than me, he's probably got quite a lot of natural supporters among, the campaign for real ale and people in small towns, rather small C Conservative, and yet he was heckled. Why? Because despite all the Treasury spin, what's actually happening today is alcohol duty is going up by 10.1%. It's been frozen since before lockdown. It's now going up by 10.1%, which is the rate of inflation last September. And that means that publicans are going to have to absorb that margin, or your beer and wine and spirits are going to go up by 10.1%. So it's 90p extra duty on a bottle of gin. It's 44p extra on a bottle of wine.
That's right.
But the big spin is that there's a Brexit bonus that beer's going to be 11p cheaper. It's not, is it?
There's actually, apart from that headline, which isn't really a headline, which should be the headline, that we got, a big increase, now an above inflation increase in alcohol duty across the board. There are 2 other little angles. One angle is, and you could say there's some sense in this, is we're going to an ABV system, alcohol by volume system. So if you drink a wine that's less alcoholic or a low alcohol beer, they will go down. If you drink spirits, they're going to go up a lot, and a lot of distillers are really upset about this. That's why the Wine and Distillery Trade Association, they're saying that this is the biggest one-off increase in duty for 50 years. And then the other little bit of spin is what they call the Great British Brexit pint guarantee. And this is saying, the Treasury is saying that they will make sure that duty just on draft beer in a pub, which is a very small part of a pub's outlay, by the way, revenue, draft beer, the duty on that will be cheaper, they're taking 11p off it at the moment, than it would be if you bought beer in a supermarket. The trouble is, the supermarkets can discount their beer and make it a loss leader to get you through the door and compete with the pubs that way. And the pubs may not be able to pass on that duty saving because they've got so many other massive overheads, and they have to pay more duty on everything else that they sell. Everything else is going up. Everything else they sell was the vast amount of their turnover. So it's almost as if Rishi Sunak is raising alcohol duty while telling the punters to expect cheaper beer when they go down the pub, which is going to give a lot of landlords a real headache. They're trying to absorb all the margins. And one of the hecklers I interviewed at for GB News at the beer festival, a very articulate guy. He runs a pub down in Wimbledon in South London. Really knows his business. He thought it was disingenuous and actually disgusting. They were the strong words he used, and he didn't strike me as anything but a natural Conservative. And yet he said that because he didn't like the Treasury's spin that they were putting on it. He said I'd have had more respect if they just told us they have to raise alcohol duty, because it's been frozen for the last 2 or 3 years.
So let's just work this out. We've got direct taxes at the highest they've been since 1951. We've now got a massive rise again on indirect taxes. And, I had the Taxpayers Alliance in here last night saying we're just wasting money hand over fist on public projects like HS2. We're spending money badly. Does there ever come a point where the taxpayer says enough?
Well, maybe we'll see that in the next election, but who are they going to vote for? Because it's not as if Keir Starmer's going to be a kind of low tax person. The overall tax burden is at a 70-year high, Nigel, at a time when the economy is struggling to grow. And, of course, the idea that you should lower taxes to grow, people say that that's been discredited by the mini-budget back in September under Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng. I'm not sure that a lot of the public really feels that. A lot of the media and political class would say that. But I think the public know instinctively that they want to keep more of their own money. And if you want to get this economy moving, we've got to get the state off people's backs. And I think Rishi Sunak is now starting to get that, or I do think that's his real instinct, to be honest with you. I think he's
I keep hearing this. I keep hearing this. You know,
let's see.
Boris Johnson, the great freedom lover, locked us down 3 times. I keep hearing we don't really want to do this, but they've been doing it for 13 years.
We're now getting to the business end of Rishi Sunak's premiership, right?
Yeah.
Could be an election within a year, probably within 15 months, say September 2024, right? And what's he doing? He's just said 100 new oil and gas licences for the North Sea. He's talking about at least at some stage lowering taxes. He's trying to appeal a bit more to, the silent majority, as the Tory party see it, rather than the more left-wing Tory reform group or Labour voters.
The mood music is better. Yeah. But as I said at the top of the show, on the banks and other things, thank you, Liam, will he act? Is it all talk? Is it all spin? Well, there's far too much of it. He's the biggest spinner since Tony Blair in number 10.